Welcome, Dolphins fans, haters, and everyone in between to your favorite show discussing the greatest franchise in sports, the Miami Dolphins. This is the PhinsPod. My name is Moose, your host. Happy Friday, and today we're going to be doing a background check on one Mr. Chris Grier. From the wonderful University of Massachusetts Amherst, Grier spent a lot of time in Miami as the director for college scouting, the better part of a decade, I believe 9 years, before he was officially made the general manager at the start of the 2016 offseason. And yes, there was a different regime at the helm, and Mike Tannenbaum's meddling hands did get in the way, but Grier still had final say before Flores came in, and now there's this joint operation. So on today's episode, we're going to look at his previous drafts, the ones with Flores and before, to see if we can notice any patterns, as well as determine his overall hit rate. Let's dive in.
So the first round, it has to be done right. And with what Brian Flores has done since he's got there, I feel like he's going to nail it. I mean, there hasn't been a decision yet that I've questioned from Flores. Even when he was pulling out Tua to put in Fitzpatrick, it seems like he just knows what he wants, and the organization backs him up. So I feel like if they go pass catcher, edge rusher, they'll be perfectly fine.
Yeah, and Brian Flores is a defensive coach. So if you think that last year they didn't get that edge rusher, maybe this is the year to do it. I'm with you on Jamar Chase. I think if the Dolphins had stayed at 3, we would be talking about quarterback the last few weeks, because it would be a strange debate of did Tua do enough?
And it's not far-fetched, right? At 3.
At 3, it's not far-fetched, but they obviously showed their faith in Tua by trading back to 12, and they obviously showed they want something to move back up to 6 and give up another first-round pick. So I think it is Jamar Chase. You have to think that Pitts is going to be gone, and that Sewell, the offensive tackle, will likely be gone too. If they thread that needle and it goes perfectly as the way they planned back in February and made all these trades, and somehow they get the guy that they still wanted but also got to move back a little bit and pick up some draft capital, that's a home run for Chris Grier.
So we're going to have a little bit of fun with this, and I guess I'm going to assign a letter grade for each of his picks, and then at the end we'll take sort of a step back and see how we feel about his drafting history heading into next week. So we're going to start with his first draft in 2016. In round 1, he selected, with his first pick ever, Laremy Tunsil, offensive lineman from Ole Miss. That's a fat old A+ on the page right there. One, considering the player he selected, great value at 13. He's turned into one of the best young left tackles in the game. I mean, the Texans rewarded him with that deal. And for the Dolphins, he's turned into this entire rebuild and this entire new look Dolphins organization. That was on the back of the deal that was made with Laremy Tunsil. So easily that pick is an A+ and a hell of a way to kick off your regime. Now, round 2. It gets better. Xavier Howard, cornerback from Baylor, another A+. Great way to start 1-2. And finding Howard in the second round, he wasn't really lauded to be a first-round guy. And when Miami did take him, he was considered a bit of a project, a press corner that, you would have to mold. He was a little too physical coming out of college. But as we've all seen, that development has absolutely hit home. And it's give Grier credit. Say that 5 times fast. Give Grier credit. He identified the talent early and took him, and found his guy. And then in round 3, they selected Kenyon Drake, running back from Alabama. Now, I'm going to give that a B+. And yes, he did not really pan out with Miami, but one, he gets a B+ just for the Miami Miracle alone. But he's turned into a damn good NFL player. Obviously, he signed contracts with the Cardinals and the Raiders, so he's definitely stayed and had some legs as a career. So getting that type of running back in round 3, not too shabby. His first big miss also came in round 3. I believe he traded up. He gave up a couple picks to come up and get Leonte Carroo, if you guys remember him back in 2016, wide receiver from Rutgers. That's an F. He came out as a physical guy. He wasn't really the best route runner. He couldn't really get separation, but he was able to sort of go over the top and muscle DBs in college. That didn't translate at the NFL level. He struggled to get separation. He never got open, but he was physical, and he did have that great touchdown catch against the Colts where he went up and snagged it when Tannehill threw that deep bomb. But overall, the career just did not pan out, and especially considering the assets given up, and he was taken in round 3, and the players taken after him at the receiver position. Yeah, that's an F. Miami didn't pick again until round 6 in 2016, and there they took Jakeem Grant, wide receiver out of Texas Tech. This is a B+. And yes, we might have our complaints about him as a receiver. Considering he was in round 6, a project guy, the Dolphins were able to get one of the best returners in the game and special teams guys, as well as a competent and productive receiver. As much as we wanted him to develop and take that next step, frankly, if he took the step we all hoped for, then this is an A+, right? So he's kind of playing around his draft status, if we're going to be honest. Round 6, he hasn't really taken the step to being a plus starter. He's just kind of a solid depth guy right now. But hey, he still has a shot to develop. Also in round 6 of that year, the Dolphins selected Jordan Lucas, a safety out of Penn State. I'm going to give this one a C. He didn't really do much for Miami, but he did go to the Chiefs, win a Super Bowl with them, and he stayed around as a special teamer. So finding a guy like that in round 6, you can't fault him, but considering he didn't do jack for the Dolphins, that's going to be a C. And then round 7, Brandon Doughty, quarterback out of Western Kentucky. This is kind of, I feel kind of bad giving out these bad grades this late in the draft. These, again, are sort of scratch-off tickets. You don't know what you're going to get. Sometimes they blossom, sometimes they don't, and we're going to see that over the course of his draft. Some of these late picks turn into gems, and no one thought anything of them. Even the biggest draft analysts who really felt like they know what they're talking about and claim that they know what they're talking about wouldn't have expected some of these guys to turn out. So, yeah, Brandon Doughty, that's an F. But again, that's a round 7 quarterback. What are you really expecting? And also another F there in round 7. They finished out the draft picking Thomas Duarte, a tight end, who was a project tight end. You were hoping he was sort of a hybrid kind of guy, not the best blocker, but sort of a Jordan Reed style guy. He never, ever panned out for Miami. Barely even saw reps in the preseason. So moving on to 2017, his second draft. So overall, 2016, we can say a pretty good start. I mean, considering UNAB, Laramie Tunsil, Xavier Howard, Kenyon Drake, and Jakeem Grant, I think that's a positive draft there. And then moving on to 2017, it's a bad start. Charles Harris was selected in the first round. That's a D. And the only reason I don't give it an F is just because, he's not Deion Jordan. He hasn't completely flamed out. He has a role in the NFL. Realistically, should have been a 5th round pick, a 4th round pick. But unfortunately, Miami took him at pick 22. So that is a D. And then in round 2 of 2017, Miami selected Raekwon McMillan, linebacker from Ohio State. This pick is a C+. And the reason I give it a C+ is because it didn't really make sense at the time. Miami was looking for a linebacker, but they needed someone with a little more athleticism. And Raekwon McMillan showed that he was very one-dimensional. And yeah, he's found a home in the NFL with the Raiders. And I wonder if he's still a free agent now. I don't know off the top of my head. But for Miami, it didn't really work out. So that's a C+. Moving on to round 3, they selected Cordrea Tankersley from Clemson, a corner. That's a D. Tankersley was sort of a press corner, very physical, very long, athletic. He did suffer from injury, so it's hard to really tell what his career could have been. He did make a couple good plays, his rookie year. There was hope that he could develop into something, even heading into 2019, but nothing really panned out, unfortunately. So, that's going to be a D there, especially considering that you took him in round 3. You still hope to get eventual starters there and contributors to your team. So that's definitely going to be a close to failing grade. And speaking of failing grades, round 5, Isaac Asiata, Utah, a guard. That's an F. Look, I loved Asiata. He was an energetic guy. If you saw any interviews when Miami brought him in, he seems like an absolutely awesome dude. And he had the build. He was a very stocky, strong, very aggressive sort of guard coming out of Utah. I thought it was a steal. I remember back when Miami got him in the 5th round, that's what a lot of the draft nicks were saying, and that's what it looked like on film. I don't really know. I guess maybe he just didn't have the strength necessarily to transition to this next level, to play against, these NFL pro elite level guards. Defensive tackles. So he couldn't transition to guard. So unfortunately, that's an F. So definitely, compared to 2016, this draft is already doing real rough. So those first 4 picks are not good. Charles Harris, Raekwon McMillan, Cordrea Tankersley, and Isaac Asiata. Bad start to this draft. He does finish it pretty strong, though. Chris Grier then takes in round 5 Devon Godchow, and that's an A. And the reason I give that an A, even though he signed away to New England, well, consider this. Why'd he sign away for a bigger deal in New England? Because Miami drafted a pretty damn good defensive tackle in the 5th round. Chris Grier identified him and paired him up with another guy in the next round, Vincent Taylor, who I give an A- to. Finding starting defensive tackles in the 5th and 6th round, that's good. That's good to do. Normally, those are developmental guys. But Godchow started out as a rookie and really impressed and was a contributor every year he was here, aside, of course, from last year when he suffered the torn biceps injury. And similar with Vincent Taylor, although he didn't re-sign with Miami, he found a home in Buffalo, and he contributed there with that really good defense. So finding two guys there, that's an A and an A- pick for sure. And then rounding out the draft in round 7, they've got Isaiah Ford, and that's a B because he wasn't really starting caliber, but he's a contributing receiver, and he definitely helped Miami win some games. I mean, specifically just for the 2019 Week 17 matchup against New England, Isaiah Ford was a chain mover in that game. He converted many an important third down. So that's a B considering that. So yeah, 2016 was a much better draft with Laramie Tunsil and Xavier Howard, Kenyon Drake compared to this draft. So 2017 was not good. So far, kind of a wash. So let's see what you got. Moving on to 2018. Miami starts it off with Minkah Fitzpatrick. And yes, the spineless man, Minkah Fitzpatrick, the front runner, never really can handle adversity. So good luck in Pittsburgh as that's going to start falling apart. But that pick is an A. I give it a begrudging A because, yeah, he is a damn good player. And unfortunately, he couldn't, swallow his pride and really make things work in Miami because he's exactly what this defense is missing, and he was a part of it. So if he could just not be such a bitch, then maybe things could have worked out. But he was, so, he's now a Steeler. But that's still an A. That's still a good pick, and I don't blame Grier at all for why Minkah's a little pussy boy. So next up, round 2, Mike Gesicki. Tight end. That's an A-plus pick. That was Miami did take him ahead of Dallas Goedert, which at the time I wasn't a big fan of, and Goedert is a really good young tight end. But what Grier did, and considering, Adam Gase probably had a little bit of involvement, so I guess he gets a little bit of credit, but they saw what he could, they projected what Mike Gesicki could be because of his skill set and because of his frame and what he could grow into. And I think we're seeing that. We saw that last year, and I think Gesicki will easily overtake Goedert by the end of next year. I think everyone will consider Gesicki, hopefully, a top 5 tight end. So getting that guy in round 2, that's an A-plus pick. And then in round 3, another good pick, Jerome Baker, linebacker from Ohio State. That's an A. That's the guy you wanted Raekwon McMillan to be a year earlier. You got him from the same school, a teammate of his, and they did play together for Miami for a couple of years there. So they definitely had a little chemistry, but Baker proved to be, even though he was taken around later, Baker proved to be the better Dolphin in the long run. So that's an A. If you can find a starting linebacker in round 3, good pick. So 2018, he's bounced back. These are some good picks, 1, 2, and 3, Minkah, Gesicki, and Baker. Then in round 4, they get Durham Smythe, a tight end from Notre Dame. That's a B-. Durham Smythe has proven to be a solid contributing factor in the run blocking, in pass blocking, and even in the passing game. He really broke out. I wouldn't really call it breaking out, but he wasn't really visible his first couple of years in the league. But last year he kind of showed that he could hold his own and be a viable depth piece and be someone you can rely on. However, I do think the Dolphins might look to upgrade that. They clearly were doing that when they brought in Adam Shaheen, and who knows, the recent addition of Ethan Carter too could add some competition there for Smythe. So B- on that pick, but it's in the 4th round, so keep that in perspective. Also in the 4th round, and this is why I say keep that in perspective, because while Durham Smythe gets a B, Kalen Ballage gets a D. Looks like Tarzan, runs like Jane. I'm telling you, he was so ripped. I was like, we got ourselves a stud. Oh my God. And yet this man, you blow on him, he would fall backwards in the backfield. He had, I believe, the lowest average per carry attempt, I think, in NFL, the last 20 years. It was atrocious. He had that one great run against the Vikings for that play. I was like, holy crap. And I remember that point in the season, the Dolphins really needed that win, and there was still hope in the Tannehill era, and you thought Gase could turn things around. Kalen Ballage runs through for 70 yards. You're like, oh my God. And then it's just everything. His career and the Dolphins organization with Gase went downhill from there. So absolutely a D. Another miss in round 6. Miami took Cornell Armstrong, corner from Southern Mississippi. That's an F. Again, it's round 6. This is really where you get into that scratch-off territory like we were talking about earlier. So don't read too much into these picks. I would really focus more on Chris Grier's overall success in rounds 1 through 5. That's really where you want to find, especially rounds 1 through 3. You don't want to miss a lot of those. And so far in these 3 years, yeah, he's missed on Harris, but overall looking pretty good in the top 4 or 5 rounds. And then they get at pick 7 in round 7, Quinton Poling from Ohio. That's an F. He, again, scratch-off ticket, couldn't even develop into a reliable special teams guy for the team, so that's an F. But then perhaps in terms of value, the greatest pick of all time, in round 7 in 2018, the Dolphins and Chris Grier selected Jason Sanders, the GOAT from New Mexico. That's an A++. And just for that, gives this whole draft an improved look. Starting with Minka and ending with Jason Sanders, that's a pretty good draft class. And in between, you got guys like Mike Gesicki, Jerome Baker, and even Durham Smythe. Not too bad. So, hey, Grier's looking on the up right now. Now we're at the 2019 draft. So these players were sophomores last year. So it's still a bit early to judge, their entire careers in the way that we can with some of the players in previous drafts like we just did. But, this is still relatively recent, the guys we're about to get into. But we're still going to give them grades based on where they stand with the Dolphins today. So we're going to be able to sort of tell how we're feeling about Grier. Right now, personally, things are looking pretty good. I mean, again, 2017 left a lot to be desired, but I feel like he's kind of made up for it in a lot of these late-round gems, as well as some of the other high-end picks that he has made that are potentially developing into really, really good players. Going into 2019 in round 1, the Dolphins, and again, this is the start of the Brian Flores era, so there's going to be a sort of change in vision. You're going to notice more physical, big guys who fit his scheme and his desire of how Brian Flores wants to play football. Before, Miami was selecting more finesse-style guys because that's the type of offense that Gase liked to run. Again, why he chose a guy like Gesicki over Goddard. But a guy like Flores, why you give him the credit, why he's one of the best young coaches, because he can take a guy like Gesicki and make him work in his scheme, even though maybe that's not the type of tight end he might have identified and preferred. He might have preferred a guy like Goddard if Flores was the coach at that time. So you might notice a bit of a difference, and it starts early. With round 1, Christian Wilkins, defensive tackle from Clemson. I'm going to give that a B+. And the only reason it's not in the A, because he's a good player, he hasn't really flashed greatness. He's flashed greatness, but he hasn't consistently kind of dominated games yet. We haven't seen him take over that game. And I think once I think it's in him, and I think it's going to happen. And that's where that pick starts looking better and better. But for now, good, solid, reliable guy getting in the middle of the first round. That's a B+ pick for sure. And listen, if I got a B+ on an exam, I'd be happy about it. So then in round 3, the Dolphins selected Michael Dieter, a guard from Wisconsin. C-. As of right now, a C-. He played his rookie year, did not look good, and then he barely played. I think he came in a couple times to spell some guys, and he held his own. I remember he did come in, and I remember thinking, wow, Dieter's not looking absolutely horrible. He's put on about 10 pounds or 5 to 10 pounds since coming in. So, again, he might have a shot. And the fact that the Dolphins haven't moved on from him like they have some of these other guys that they've cycled in and out does point to the fact that he's putting in the work, and they clearly like something about him. But he hasn't panned out, especially when you take him in round 3. Usually a guard, that's where you hope to hit. So the fact that he hasn't been a starter, that's a C-. And then in round 5, the Dolphins got Andrew Van Ginkel, outside linebacker from Wisconsin as well. Backing it up back-to-back with Wisconsin guys. And instead of a C-, this is easily an A. Van Ginkel is the reason the Dolphins were able to let Kyle Van Noy walk and save all that money. He's clearly developed. He's shown a work ethic. He's shown a tenacity on the field. He attacks the ball. He's always around the play. So definitely a really good find in round 5. That's a gem right there. And then in round 6, Isaiah Prince was selected, a tackle from Ohio State. Again, scratch off, hope to develop. He had a lot of physical tools, but that's an F. Things really didn't pan out. He just wasn't twitchy enough to really hang with NFL defensive ends and edge players. And then in round 7, the Dolphins got a couple guys. One, Chandler Cox, fullback from Auburn. That's a C-. And the only reason it's not lower, and I did give it a C, is because at the time with, Chad O'Shea, there seemed to be more of a focus on potentially having a fullback. And Chandler Cox, he wasn't the best fullback, which is why you give him a C-. But if that role was needed by the team, if he filled that role to a C- level, just because the Dolphins kind of moved on from that and decided to fill it elsewhere and kind of use tight ends in those sets and save that roster spot, I don't really blame him or necessarily Grier for that regard. And then in round 7 of 2019, they also nabbed Myles Gaskin, running back from Washington. That's an A. You get a starting level running back in round 7. Again, and let's kind of sit here for a second. This is, again, why I don't think the Dolphins should take a guy like Najee Harris. As good as he is, you could argue 10 times the back Myles Gaskin is. I wouldn't say that much, but you could argue that he is that much better. But you can still find contributing guys this late. The Dolphins got Myles Gaskin in round 7. That's easily an A, right? Obviously. But why would you then invest that high value draft capital on a running back when you can find guys who will do the exact same thing for you? Run the ball, catch the ball out of the backfield. And yeah, maybe like every other play, a guy like Najee Harris gets you that extra 2-3 yards, but it's not worth it when in reality, if you just bolster your offensive line, invest in that instead, invest in, making sure that your quarterback's supported, then you can get any running back and win. Again, the Patriots have proved it year in, year out for the last 20 years. You don't need to win with a running back, and I think Flores is going to follow that. So that's why I don't necessarily think Miami would take a guy like Najee Harris, because they haven't taken a running back high while under Chris Grier. The highest running back they took was in the 3rd round, and that was Kenyon Drake. So I'm not entirely sold based on his history that he's going to go running back in round 1, but we will find out. But for 2019, based on everything we're seeing, not a great draft. I mean, considering they only had 6 picks, I guess you can't really... they did get 3 starters there: Myles Gaskin, Andrew Van Ginkel, and Christian Wilkins. So frankly, you know what? That's pretty good. And Michael Dieter also has the opportunity to develop. So hey, 2019, considering how few picks they had compared to other years, not too bad. And now we're going to look at last year's draft, the 2020 NFL draft. And the Dolphins started by taking Tua Tagovailoa, Austin Jackson, and Noah Igbinoghene in round 1. Of course, we all know my thoughts on Tua. I feel pretty good about that pick. But that story is yet to be written. Same as with Austin Jackson. We have no idea what he's going to become. Again, a physical sort of freak, a dancing bear, if you will. Very athletic, also very young, so he can definitely build on that frame. And maybe, 2-3 years down the line, you're like, damn, we got ourselves a really good left tackle there at pick 18, but still too early to tell. Again, he started for Miami, and Miami was a 10-win team. So that you have to give credit there for that. But he didn't look dominant. He didn't look exactly what you want a left tackle to look like, but again, he was like 21 years old. And then 30th overall, they selected Noah Igbinoghene. So you could argue that the first round picks, none of them have proven anything yet, and so that's a little concerning. But again, it's been literally a year, and considering the lack of offseason for these guys, and the fact that I would argue that Tua Tagovailoa and Austin Jackson did help contribute and were actually pretty damn good first round picks, I don't feel too bad about it. Yes, Noah Igbinoghene did not show as much as we want to, but again, he too has an opportunity to change that narrative. Then in round 2, they selected Robert Hunt, and someone I think, and Robert Hunt also developing, but he too saw, some significant amount of snaps last year. So at the very least about this class, you can say the rookies contributed. They might not necessarily develop into the best guys, and that we'll get a better picture on 3 years down the road. But for now, at least they're contributing and on the field. But a guy that I'm already going to declare a steal and a A-plus pick, Raekwon Davis in round 2. Flores knew it the second they got him. His reaction was clear, but oh my God, Raekwon Davis showed to be so dominant last year, and I think he's only going to get better in this defense. So great pick in round 2. And then in round 3, when Miami selected Brandon Jones, I won't lie, out of Texas, I really wasn't sure. I didn't know a lot about him. I wasn't entirely sure how to feel about that pick. I knew Miami needed a safety. Brandon Jones seemed like kind of a tweener between a free and a strong safety, but damn, he looked really good. He's a baller. He gets on the field and he just becomes an animal. So I think that was a great pick, and I think he's going to develop into a really good young safety. Again, hopefully if he just improves from what he showed as a rookie last year. And then in round 4, another damn good pick, Solomon Kindley. You find a starting guard in round 4. That's what I'm talking about. You take Michael Dieter in round 3 a year earlier and it fails miserably. Hey, Solomon Kindley, round 4, you made up for it. And then in round 5, they landed Jason Strobridge and Curtis Weaver. Strobridge is still on the Dolphins. He played some snaps. He didn't really pop when he was on the field. But again, it's a round 5 pick. So, he's still on the roster. So again, there's something that the Dolphins like and are wanting to work with. Curtis Weaver was poached after he suffered an injury. I think he got cut again by the Browns after he was added to the practice squad. But the fact Miami hasn't really brought him back to the rotation or made any efforts, that's not really looking like that was much of a great pick. Then in round 6, they actually finished out last year pretty good, getting Blake Ferguson. And look, you can argue all you want. Why the hell would you draft a long snapper? I know I felt a little bit that way. I was like, wait, why are they taking a long snapper? Like, just use that pick on a developmental receiver or something. But if you think about it, that's a starter, and he's probably going to be their starter for the next decade. He's really good. You got the best long snapper, the best young long snapper in the game. So that's not a bad thing to get, to know that, hey, that's not a headache now, nothing to be worried about in our special teams unit. And it allows you to develop with that 7th-round gem kicker you got, Jason Sanders, to make sure that the chemistry stays as long as possible and keeping that same unit together. So getting them 2 young guys that can grow, that's good. So in hindsight, and also considering Blake Ferguson is an awesome guy in terms of, the community, that's great, finding a guy in the 6th round who can also help make an impact beyond football. And also shout out him and his brother, who is actually the long snapper for the Buffalo Bills, are starting a podcast as well after the snap. So be sure to follow them on all that stuff if you want to get some insight on what it's like to be a long snapper in the pro game. But I think that's actually turned out to be a decent pick in round 6, considering a lot of those other guys taken have completely flamed out. And then in round 7, they finished it off by getting Malcolm Perry, who I'm excited about. I think, you saw that. You sort of mic'd up with Jerome Baker. You saw how he felt about Malcolm Perry. He felt he was the most slippery guy on the field, hardest guy to tackle on the team. That says something. And I think he showed that when he got the ball in his hands. He made guys miss, kind of like Lynn Bowden, a little bit quicker than Lynn Bowden, just as shifty, though, and honestly a little bit more shifty. So it's going to be interesting to see if he can take a step forward in this offense, because I think the coaching staff likes him, and they definitely want to make a role for him. But he is a little bit redundant now with Jakeem Grant, and Lynn Bowden, as we said. And if Miami does bring in a couple guys, at least a high-end receiver, and then maybe they double up on the position, which I would expect maybe in the 4th or 5th round. So Malcolm Perry might have a tough shot, but I foresee him having a role in the NFL. If it doesn't work out with Miami because of, roster issues and there's just no room, which I actually hope not, because I do think you can make a guy like him work in an offense, design plays. And I frankly would kind of prefer him over Jakeem Grant, just in terms of his promise and potential, and the fact that you have him on the cheap for a few more years compared to Jakeem Grant, who's a little more expensive. But we'll see with Malcolm Perry. I think at the very least he'll find a home somewhere else. He'll most likely end up being a Patriot for all we know. I know New England definitely liked Perry a lot. He said after he got drafted by Miami that the Patriots had actually shown the most interest in him. So that other teams had an eye on the guy as well. But that probably goes back to Bill Belichick's Navy roots and Army roots and stuff like that. But even in this last year's draft, 2020, we can point to contributors, right, who showed well as rookies. So Austin Jackson, Robert Hunt, Raekwon Davis, Solomon Kinley, Brandon Jones, Tua Tagovailoa, right? In order for the Dolphins to develop, they need these young guys to take the next step and develop as well. So now that we've looked back at the last 4 years that Chris Grier has controlled the draft, how should we feel about him as an evaluator of talent? I think it's vital that you consider the regime change, right, when looking at all these drafts, and don't undervalue how bad Adam Gase proved to be, right? And his input, as well as Mike Tannenbaum's input, definitely played a role in some of those picks in the mid-rounds. So the fact that some of these names are not part of the new regime, the Minkah Fitzpatricks, things like that, that shouldn't point necessarily super negatively on Chris Grier, because, again, there was sort of the shift beyond his control in the coaching ranks. Again, he brought in names like Laramie Tunsil, Xavier Howard, Jason Sanders, Myles Gaskin, Jerome Baker, Mike Gesicki, and then mid-round picks, Devon Godchow. That's a damn steal in the 5th round. And even the puss, Minkah Fitzpatrick. These are good names to have on your resume as a drafter. And that's why, in my opinion, Chris Grier is pretty damn good. And yeah, he's had his fair share of misses too. Charles Harris was bad. Really bad, as was Leonte Carew and Cordrea Tankersley, but they were at least swings and misses, not misses due to some blatantly obvious fact. It wasn't an Isaiah Wilson situation where these guys had character issues. They just didn't develop, right? Charles Harris, he had an explosive first step. We had Cam Wake. You really hoped he could kind of learn under him, and you projected a lot there, and that was a mistake. Don't project that much, and that's what happened with Charles Harris, but at least there was a vision there. It didn't work out, but there was vision. Same with Leonte Carew and Tankersley. You hope Tankersley could kind of follow the Xavier Howard route and develop, because they had a similar build physically and similar play styles in terms of press corners. But again, those things don't always work out. People did have hope for them too at the time, and they were considered good value too. So not everything can pan out exactly as you hope. But how do you guys feel, right? Is Chris Grier a great negotiator only and is able to, fleece teams and trade deals and draft trades, but he falls short actually selecting that talent? Is that how you feel? Or are you pretty happy with his run so far and actually look forward to what he can do in the coming years as well, given more and more capital? Let us know in the comments below. Who has been your favorite pick too of the last 5 years? Personally, got to be Xavier Howard. But hey, Jason Sanders and Mike Gesicki are up there as well, considering where they were taken in the draft and the value and what they can end up becoming at their positions. And of course, Tua. That was a damn good pick too. But what about y'all? What do you guys think?
Peter, those are potentially likely scenarios, and they're good scenarios. We're talking dream scenarios here. Like, let's dream big.
Yeah.
With all respect to Darisaw, let's look in the pie in the sky vision here. Right? I love Christian Darisaw as much as the next guy. The dream scenario is they get Kyle Pitts at 6. The dream scenario is there's 5 straight quarterbacks taken to start the draft. Which, who knows? Maybe it happens. The first 3, and then Atlanta and Cincinnati trade, and Miami's sitting there being like, we'll take the best player in the draft. We'll take Pitts right now. Or maybe instead of 5 quarterbacks, somebody takes Chase before Pitts at 4 or 5. We don't know that. All right, so that's only half the dream. You get Kyle Pitts. I think at 18, if you have a Devontae Smith fall, you take him too. He and Tua have the background, and now you have Pitts and the Heisman winner out of Alabama, and you're absolutely loaded. It's not as practical as taking alignments, maybe not even as smart as taking alignment, but it's incredibly explosive. In the meantime, in my dream scenario, I have the New England Patriots trading all the way back and just collecting draft picks and not taking a quarterback. The Jets decide to get nuts, watch Peter's mock draft, and take Davis Mills with their pick. And the Bills declare an open competition between Josh Allen and Mitch Trubisky in training camp. That's a dream damn scenario, okay? What do you think?
That's going to do it for us here today. Thank you all so much for listening to the PhinsPod. Hope you enjoyed it. We actually want to give a huge shout out to our first patron from Patreon, Timothy R. Ritchie. Appreciate you so much and the support for the show. If you want to join him as well as others and bonus content for literally $2 a month, you can listen to bonus episodes, and there's other tiers as well with some other goodies, including these shout outs. So thank you so much for the support, Tim. And also the link is in the description, or head over to patreon.com/PhinsPod if you want to join in. Thank you all so much for the support. And please remember to like the video if you enjoyed the show, and subscribe just so you never miss a chance to chat about your Miami Dolphins. Remember that the PhinsPod is also available on all platforms: Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts, and of course here on YouTube. Continue the conversation with us over on Twitter and Instagram @PhinsPod, and check out the site for news and content as well, phinspod.com. Hope you all have an amazing day, and until next time, have a great start to your weekend. Stay safe. Love y'all.